Okay, I think we'll make a start there because we've got quite a tight agenda today, and I want to make sure that we've got plenty of time to get through the content itself. Um, so thank you very much to everyone who's able to join us today, and thank you also to all of our speakers. To those of you who haven't joined one of our events previously, my name is Henry Phillipson. I'm co-founder of ESGVC. I also work for a venture capital firm called Berengia. And just a brief few words on ESGVC for those of you who are new to the network. We're a group of VC firms all over the world, from the UK and Europe to Australia and New Zealand, Canada, the US, around 300 members or so today. And what we're primarily focused on is helping early stage businesses and their investors to measure and improve their ESG performance. So we run events like the one today. We also offer training to portfolio companies, and I suppose critical to today's discussion, we also have a measurement framework that we've developed that's rapidly becoming one of the key industry standards for understanding ESG within venture portfolios. And so looking forward today to giving you a bit of an update on that framework, as well as some of the additional support that we provide to investors and their portfolio companies using that framework. So we're going to have quite a quick and busy agenda to run through. So in a couple of moments, I'll just hand over to Susie Gillespie from the BVCA, who will give us an update on the research that we ran this year, but also give you an insight into what we've got planned for next year and how you can take part. Emily Havers from Fidelity International Strategic Ventures will also then just give an update on how she has led on the updates to the measurement framework for 2025. We'll then have a panel with a couple of our investor members where they'll share some perspectives on how they've been using the framework with their portfolio companies. And then finally, we'll have a few of our new platform partners talking about how they can support ESGVC members with collecting data from their portfolio companies. And we'll round that all off with a quick Q&A for all of you on the line today to ask us any questions that you might have about using our measurement framework. Just as a reminder, we'll have the chat and Q&A functions open throughout the conversation. So for any questions that crop up as we're going through the slides or during the discussions, then please feel free to leave those in there for us to pick up at the Q&A section. So I think then that's my sort of whistle-stop introduction. So over to you, Susie, for a bit of an update on research and plans for 2025.
Thank you, Henry. It's great to be here today supporting the venture capital and startup community. I'm Susie Gillespie. I'm head of research at the BVCA. So what is the BVCA? First question. And what's our role at ESGVC? So the BVCA, or the British Private Equity and Venture Capital Association, is the trade body representing private capital in the UK, which obviously includes venture capital. I head up the research team, and we've been pleased to support ESGVC since inception. We are the data partner for ESGVC, consolidating and analysing the data on portfolio companies supplied to us by venture capital firms, which they receive from their portfolio companies. We treat your data in confidence, and we never publish individual firm data, but we use the data that's been pulled together collectively from across the ecosystem to draw out themes and trends, and we publish that in an annual report. For the latest cycle, we collected data as at mid-2023, bringing together data from nearly 600 portfolio companies across over 50 metrics. Obviously, not every portfolio company was able to complete every metric. So in our report, we focused on the ones that got the greatest response rates. Our sample size increases every year, but will contain different companies. So while we can look at year-on-year trends, as this is the third year of the survey, the sample's not exactly like for like. Let's step forward and look at a few of the headline figures. On environmental metrics, while still the lowest scoring area of the framework overall, there's been a close on doubling of the proportion of startups who are measuring their carbon footprint. And although we are looking at startups, we're seeing a slight increase in the number of firms setting up net zero carbon targets, even at this relatively early stage in development, which I think is really interesting. Turning to the social statistics, there's been notable year-on-year increase in the proportion of startups which provide study support and upskilling, now over 50% of firms. So I think that's really good for demonstrating how the startup community is building the skill set within the UK, across Europe and across the world. However, board and leadership gender diversity remains low, with a fifth of startups having no women in leadership roles. And at board level, it's even worse. So there's clearly more to do there. governance metrics have been collectively the strongest out of the E, the S, and the G every year in the study. But we've spotlighted some here with a focus on AI and cyber risk on the slide, because that's pretty topical these days. It's been a notable step up in the proportion of companies training their staff on cybersecurity risk and responsible use of AI, but still more to do. And we'll look in a minute at how that might vary by sector. So let's move on to look at it through a sector lens. Ideally, as the sample size increases.
Apologies.
Oops, go back. That's the one. Next one, Henry. That's it. Thank you. Let's look at this through a sector lens. So ideally, as the sample size increases, I'd love to be able to look at this in much more detail, analysing what rates we're getting for each particular sector. But for now, we're focused on SaaS companies and health tech and biotech businesses, as they're the ones which we've got a large enough sample within our nearly 600 companies. And sectors clearly have different set strengths and weaknesses. For example, SaaS businesses are doing relatively better on training and use of AI, but fewer companies measure their carbon footprint, and a huge 45% of them have no female representation on their board. In our full report, we have a breakdown by sector, and there's more detail on this, including analysis by stage of company development. The report can be found on either the ESGBC or the BVCA websites, and I'm sure Henry will share it in the follow-up email that goes out after this webinar. So let's move to the last slide from me, which is timeline and next steps. So the new framework is launching today, and Emily will speak to the changes momentarily. At this point in time, we're asking portfolio companies to gather the data, complete the template, and to use it in their decision making. Look at the template. Which of the metrics are most relevant and important to you? Ideally, I'd love you to complete all of it from a data perspective, but being realistic, if you're a startup, you need to use it to think about which data points are the most relevant to you and use that to inform your decision making. Once the portfolio companies have gathered the data, we'd like that to be shared with the VCs so they can use to compare performance between companies. And we'll be hearing from some of our VC users shortly. And finally, once we've got all of that, please send it to the BVCA. That can either be done using the base template aggregated with the snazzy spreadsheet that we have. I think it's called the ESGBC aggregator tool for those who prefer spreadsheets. But this year, for the first time, we've also got a number of data partners with us who are on the call today. And you can use those platforms to collect the data using the framework, and you'll be able to export the data from there and send it to the BVCA. We ask that you share data with the BVCA by mid-Feb to give us time to analyse and aggregate the data before we publish the next edition of the report in the summer. So that's it from me. Now over to you, Emily.
Thank you, Susie. Hi, everyone. I'm Emily Havers. And so you're going to talk to some of the updates we've made for this year's framework. So for those familiar with the framework, you'll know that annually we make updates. This year, no surprise, we've made some updates again. A lot of these kind of hygiene factors. So if we look on the right-hand side, you'll kind of see the points that allude to this there. So we've done a lot of work with both investors, but also the companies filling out the framework to really understand, are there certain areas of issue or confusion that just aren't making sense when it comes to the data reporting, and how can we rectify those? But also thinking about the materiality around the questions and whether they're still relevant and the sort of data that they want to be reporting on and seeing. We've also done a bit of work to look at kind of year-on-year completion rates for certain questions, and have decided to take some out of the framework based on this. So where we're seeing that just annually there isn't that data feeding through and there's not a high enough level of completion, there has been cases where we've now removed questions based on that. And what this is really allowing us to do is kind of our key objective of creating a framework, that is robust, but equally isn't hugely cumbersome on the companies that are reporting of it, and isn't a huge burden on them. And then on the left-hand side, and the other kind of factor, we all know that ESG is a constantly evolving topic. And so we want to ensure that the framework stays reflective of this. So there's a bit of work that's been done to ensure that we're reflecting new and upcoming themes into the framework, and also aligning with new industry standards that are coming through. So things like BVCA, SFDR, and a lot more has been done to ensure that we're more aligned with the Invest Europe template. So if we go to the next slide. So key updates for 2025. This is by no means the kind of full comprehensive list. It's the highlights. But if people do have questions once they've seen the framework, please do reach out and let us know. We're more than happy to kind of run through anything or go through any specific questions. Within environmental, we've kept the questions around scope 1, 2, and 3, but you will notice a change in wording there. Around energy consumption, we previously asked around office energy consumption. We've now changed this. So we're more asking around total energy usage and then renewable energy usage instead. And then supply chain materiality. This is one of those questions that we were seeing a lot of feedback from companies who maybe don't have a physical supply chain, who are confused as to whether some of the questions were relevant to them or not around things like recycling or packaging. So what we've now done is put these questions into a specific area just to make it easier for companies who kind of in the box of not having a physical supply chain to go through and just tick not relevant for them. So making the framework easier to complete as people go through it. So under social, parental policy, again, this was a question that has caused a bit of confusion in previous years. So we've just adapted this to try and make it a bit clearer, asking, one part of the question around what is statutory in that country's HQ, and then a secondary question as to kind of what the support above the statutory amount is. And then around the diversity and inclusion questions, you'll probably notice there's been a few changes here. So for the first time, we're asking around founder diversity, which we haven't included in the past, and we feel is really important to be monitoring and understanding. But this was also one of those sections where we saw historic year-on-year kind of data lacking in certain areas. So we have decided to remove some of those questions just based on that, and that we weren't seeing the data flow through or people kind of wanting to collect it. And then in the governance section, this is, again, there's been a few changes and alignment with the Invest Europe framework, and governance was a key area for collaboration of this. You'll see a new policy library where we've got a simplified drop down where people can just go through and select which policies they do and don't have. So again, simplifying that and making it a little easier. In the governance section, but also kind of throughout the framework more generally, we've got a greater focus on asking for additional detail around metrics. And this is really kind of focused for investors to use once they're reviewing the framework for individual companies, to really think about what are the nuances behind just the pure data. So, we all know ESG is complex. Behind just a yes or no question, there may be additional kind of factors and themes that people want to add in more detail around. So just encouraging people to, one, fill those out, but two, actually for investors to look through and understand a bit more as to what some of their companies are doing. And then next slide, please, Henry. Thank you. So yeah, generic guidance for users. This first point is probably more applicable to people who have filled out or undertaken the framework previously. So just to flag that overall scores from this year should not be compared to previous frameworks. This is purely due to the fact that we have made quite a comprehensive amount of changes. And so comparing sort of like for like on pure scores is just not going to feed through and not give an accurate representation of kind of progress that's been made. What we would recommend as an alternative people do is kind of analyze data on key metric. So for things like emissions reporting or things like board oversight, where they have that direct comparability, you can look there. Or also look where companies have previously put as something as a focus area for the next 12 months, and then see where progress has been made against that is another alternative there. A few other things to flag. So we'll be sharing some written guidance later this month. That should hopefully as well be helpful for people who the framework is completely new to, as well as give some tips for people who have completed in the past. And the framework is now live, so I'm sure Henry will be sending out more details around how people can access it, either directly from us or via our platform partners. So yeah, thank you.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for that, Emily and Susie. We're now going to move on to our investor panel, where Emily and Nina are going to be joining us for a bit of a discussion about how they've been using the framework over the past few years. I would just encourage people, so the framework is available now online from our website, esgbc.co.uk. There'll be a quick form that you'll find on that website to download the framework. So please do download it as we speak. As I say, if there are any questions that you may have as you go through it live on the call, then this is the time to ask questions, and we'll have plenty of time to respond to those questions at the end of the event. But without further ado, it's on to our investor panel. So Emily and Nina, hello, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us on the panel. If we could just start with a couple of quick introductions. So maybe Emily first, just explain.
Yeah, sure. Great, thanks. So I'm Emily Matthews. I'm leading ESG at Oxford Science Enterprises, or OSE. We're investing in the spinouts out of the University of Oxford. So our portfolio, it's spanning health tech, life sciences, and deep tech. Deep tech could be anything from fusion energy to quantum computing to ag tech. In terms of stage, ranges from pre-seed to IPO. Which from a sustainability point of view means we see quite a bit of variation in terms of what topics are material and the maturity of the sustainability strategies of our companies.
Fantastic. And Nina?
Hi, I'm Nina Foote, partner and head of growth at Evolution. We're a UK-based VC investing in technology businesses that redefine productivity. We were founded in 2020 during the global pandemic, and had a real mission to try and make venture better for all stakeholders. So we have successfully launched and deployed our first fund, investing in fintech and SaaS businesses, and we're about to close on our second fund. Our first close just coming up, aimed at productivity enhancing companies in capital markets and the workplace. We've had quite a strong focus on embedding ESG both within our firm and also our portfolio. And we have introduced a unique ESG and carbon carry scheme, which I'm happy to speak a little bit about, but it's linked to the ESG framework.
Well, maybe that's a good jumping off point, Nina. And I know we've obviously been talking about this for several years now. I think you were one of the first firms to come on board. So maybe if you could just explain for today's attendees sort of how you've been using the ESG measurement framework, how it supported your role specifically, but also the firm's broader ESG strategy.
Of course. So I first came across the framework about 3 years ago when I was looking to put the ESG strategy together for Evolution, and was sort of racking my brains and trying to start from scratch. And then I came across this, and it was perfect because it was easy to use. It was ideal for the stage and type of businesses that we were investing in. It was validated by ESG experts and the Social Value Portal, and other VCs were using it. So it wasn't just us asking our portfolio companies to do it. Some of our co-investors were using the same framework. So it was perfect, and that's why I've done it for the last 3 years. We use the data for internal benchmarking for our portfolio, and for our own ESG and sustainability report that we provide to our investors and stakeholders. Initially, we used it as part of the onboarding process, so that we could explain our ESG, how we like to work with companies to the management, but we've actually started using it now also as part of our investment process, so that we can really understand what the companies are doing, what level they are, and how they benchmark as we invest, and if there are any questions that are raised. And we also find that using it as part of the wider benchmarking exercise is fantastic, because you have all these industry trends that you can see, and it's fantastically helpful for our portfolio. Last year, we managed to have 100% participation from our portfolio companies, which we're very proud of. But it's only 11 companies before get too overexcited. But the framework itself is also linked to this portfolio carry scheme that I was talking about, whereby we incentivize the management of our portfolio companies to drive ESG within their businesses. And if they hit certain milestones, then we will give them a share of carry in our fund. And if they achieve this, which is our ESG carry, we will also share an additional amount of carry, which is called carbon carry, which will go directly to carbon offsetting and removal initiatives.
That's great. Thanks, Nina. We may come back to that point specifically if we've got time. Emily, maybe I can sort of ask the same question of you. So how does this build into your workflows and your sort of day-to-day role and your management of ESG across the firm?
Yeah, so also I came across it, I think 3 years ago, because this will be our third annual ESG survey that we sent out. I came from ESG in public markets, used to 400 different metrics, mainly quantitative. Came to VC, how can we apply this and actually make it relevant and fit for purpose? So when I saw the ESG VC framework, I was, super pleased. One, because it's a mix of, the key quantitative metrics on emissions and diversity that we'll definitely need. And you need that to future-proof the companies and get them used to the kind of metrics that will be expected down the line, but also primarily, a mix of qualitative metrics. One of the key bits that I like with the ESG VC framework is the yes, no, but intend to in the next 12 months, and kind of being able to see the ambition of companies, see what they're committing to in the next 12 months. That was one of the reasons that it stood out to me. Of course, being able to have guidance and signposting for companies as well was really useful. And then ditto with what Nina touched on, the consistency and alignment with co-investors was really key. We don't want to add to, any of the reporting burden that companies might have. And so, we've seen the benefits of that with using ESG VC. I've had some companies have, right when we sent it out, already have it filled out because they've already completed it for another investor, and then just forward that on. So, we were being able to see that alignment in practice, which was great. In terms of how we're using it, I'd say there's a lot of overlap there. So our annual reporting, we included in the sustainability section of our annual report. Have it last year was the first year that we published portfolio level results relating to ESG, to keep us also, make sure that we're transparent on where we are. Being able to use it internally, both for portfolio level analyses, being able to see sector and stage insights, engage with the investment teams on that, see where there might be gaps or areas that we need to focus on more. So last year, we saw that there were more companies committing to wanting to have ESG at the board level, have an ESG policy. So being able to use that to see where we need to provide support to companies, but then also company specific insights. So while we're using this as our annual data collection rather than in due diligence, when we are looking at ESG pre-investment, now that we've had this for a couple of years and we have that data, we can see, okay, our company is making progress on the commitments that they've made. Is it, staying based, year on year, and we're not seeing changes? So we can now start feeding that into the due diligence for follow-on rounds as well.
That's great, Emily. Thank you. And I think you sort of alluded to some of the challenges maybe you face, or rather faced perhaps when you first joined OSE from a sort of different context of ESG. But could you just go into a little bit more detail? What are the sort of typical challenges you find in engaging portfolio companies in your role?
Well, I think in early stage venture capital, we're always going to hear about resource constraints, time constraints, saying that you're collecting data already, you can kind of be hit immediately with that this is adding more work. And, it's not that this is a task that takes 5 minutes, and it shouldn't. But I think being able to show that this is one, a chance for you to be able to identify, where there might be gaps, but also I think demystifying ESG is a key area that we need to focus potentially more on. And so one of the aspects when I joined was showing, you're already talking about a lot of these topics. So, cybersecurity, you're already discussing it. You're already discussing health and safety. You're already looking at employee well-being. Now let's see where there might be gaps within the ESG framework, which might not already be on the agenda. So I think that's the kind of key challenges. When people hear the term ESG, it seems somewhat opaque. It seems like there's a billion things under this umbrella to do. And so being able to show, you're not starting from scratch. You already have a lot of this in place. And I think the ESG VC roadmap really shows that, as well as, it can give some of those companies, oh yes, we already have all these policies in place. We actually do have this initiative. I didn't realize that fit under ESG is always really helpful. Another challenge, I think, is just being able to, again, it's similar, but there are so many topics, being able to show you don't need to do everything at once. So highlighting, these are 3 focus areas that you might have over the next year. Let's get those kind of foundations and strategies in place before we move to measurement, before we move to targets, and being able to provide companies with support and guidance on those kind of few topics.
Great, thanks for that, Emily. Nina, anything to add? Any sort of particular challenges that you've found when sort of trying to build out an ESG strategy for an emerging manager?
Yeah, I mean, I think Emily nailed it. It's the companies that we're investing in are time poor, resource poor, and they're also under a huge amount of pressure to perform and to hit the metrics that they need to get to the next round. So ESG can seem like a bit of a distraction for them. And I think there's also, as Emily said, there's a huge knowledge gap, and the perceived complexity of ESG is certainly a barrier to entry. We have a few ways of trying to overcome these challenges. One through providing resources to our portfolio management through our ESG hub that we offer. And actually a lot of the resources come from sources like ESG VC, Venture ESG, and useful articles, lists of suppliers, useful reference points, etc. We also try and discuss the business case with the portfolio companies. So really sort of understanding ESG and its potential for value creation, future-proofing, as Emily said, against regulators and future investment rounds. Also about how recruiting and retaining staff. There's a statistic that 2 out of 5 employees are willing to leave their company if they feel that it's not doing enough in terms of ESG. And I think that's a very powerful case for these businesses when they are really struggling to get the best talent and to keep hold of them as well. We also try to lead by example. So we as a fund have also gone through the ESG process, and we've got policies and practices in place. We measure our carbon footprint and offset our carbon. We've done that for the last couple of years. So we're a small team, and we can show that even with a small team you can make some progress there. And finally, we have our incentive program, which I referenced, which, if nothing else, is a very good opportunity to open the conversation and start explaining, why we think it's so important. So it helps to align our values with the portfolio companies.
That's great. Thanks, Nina. And I think you've also mentioned a good point, which is we do also see many members actually using the ESG VC framework on their own firms. So there are some instances where it may not be quite perfect for a venture capital firm, but broadly speaking, we are small businesses ourselves for the most part, and we are able to go through exactly the same exercise as our portfolio companies. So I definitely encourage people to do that. Just one sort of final point, I suppose, that I wanted to just briefly touch on is obviously the benchmarking efforts that we produce in partnership with the BVCA. Which clearly we always want to grow, want to bring more people into. Could you just talk a little bit about how you maybe use that data or similar types of benchmarking to incentivize portfolio companies? Maybe Emily first.
Yeah, so benchmarking, I think, is such a key component in this. It helps our companies kind of understand when they need to get where, what topics they should focus on when. And so I think with the BVCA ESG VC benchmarking was really helpful to see whether our portfolio and the companies were in line with what we're seeing in the industry, what the direction of travel is, and then again, how that might change on certain topics for certain sectors. So that the one part is being able to refer to the report and kind of see our performance against that. There's also been kind of internal portfolio level benchmarking. So we've had companies reach out saying, can you provide me any kind of stats on what you're seeing across the portfolio in terms of parental leave and how that might change from a Series A stage to Series B, and being able to go into our data and be able to say, okay, this is when we're starting to see, return to work initiatives come into place. And all of that is really helpful to kind of ground recommendations in data. And then the other bit is this is the first year we have sent out the survey via Nevada, and one of the key recommendations or reasons rather that we went with that is also because of the ability to have benchmarking there and be able to show this is when you should start implementing some of these initiatives, and here's when you might be falling behind.
That's great. And Nina, anything to add on that?
Totally agree with all of that. I think it is really helpful for our companies to see what other companies are doing, and specifically the way it's broken down by stage and sector, and now geography too. I think that's incredibly helpful. Yeah.
Great. That's great. And I suppose just to sort of wrap up the panel, I just wanted to ask you both for one piece of advice for those investors on the line today who might be either thinking about starting to build out an ESG strategy, or maybe who are just sort of looking to refine or strengthen their approach today. Emily, maybe you first. One piece of advice.
I think use this as a chance to engage with companies, be able to provide support. Use this as a chance to we need more case studies. We need more examples of best practice. So use it for that. And then one other piece of advice is the same as what we provide our companies is, progress over perfection. We're changing our strategy year on year, trying to improve it. So don't let perfect get in the way of just getting started.
Great, thanks. And Nina?
Yeah, so I think really start the conversation early on. And if ESG, the acronym, is unappealing or off-putting, frame it as, best practice for building a resilient and competitive business. I think use this ESG framework. It's brilliant. The benchmarking is really helpful. It's relevant and easy to use. And the more data you get, the better. And finally, consider incentives, to help align company values, to start the conversation and to demonstrate your own commitment.
Fantastic. Well, thank you both. That was a really helpful discussion. I think hopefully lots of useful insights and advice for everyone on the call today. I'm just going to therefore move on to our next panel. So thank you both. We'll speak soon.
Thank you.
And I will now just shift gears. So for the first time this year, ESGBC has started to work directly with a series of platform partners. So these are organizations who will be able to help us, or rather our members, to gather data from their portfolio companies. So today we've got our 3 platform partners, Appiday, Novata, and Port F joining us. So hopefully we'll see them all joining us on the panel in a moment. So what we're just going to do now is ask each of our platform partners to run through a brief summary of their offerings, of what it offers to investors, how they can support you and your portfolio companies, and also likewise, I think, how they specifically might be able to tailor those services to ESGBC members. Each platform I'm going to ask to give a 5-minute presentation. Hopefully you can just quickly share your screen to run through slides. If there's any issues, obviously I can sort of pick up. But maybe if we just go alphabetically by platform. So maybe Ed from Appiday, if I could ask you to go first. Hopefully you can share screen if you do have slides and just want to run through what you had to present.
Perfect. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear. Thank you.
Great. And you can see the screen. I'll put it on the screen. So hi, I'm Ed. I'm the co-founder, CEO of Appiday, and I'm going to tell you about Appiday in 5 minutes, as Henry said. So Appiday, we are an ESG reporting platform that aims to take away the pain from ESG compliance and reporting that you're all facing. And second of all, we aim to also generate opportunities from that ESG exercise by helping you improve ESG performance. As we heard from the panel, and specifically, I think, Emily, with companies from pre-seed to pre-IPO, every fund, every company has a different level of ESG maturity. And with Appiday, really, we take you where you are, and we take you wherever you want to go on your ESG journey. The way we do that is first with technology, with the best platform on the market for VC funds and their portfolio companies. We do it with human expertise. You will always be accompanied by an ESG expert and also by a customer success manager that will both know your project inside and out. And lastly, we do it with a very strong focus on data. I mean, ESG is all about data. We talk about benchmarking, improvement, all that stuff is linked to data. And so we have a very secure data platform. And also data is more generally the specialty of Appiday. And I want to say one more thing, ESG is very complex and you have a lot of other, you have your business to run. And I think that with Appiday, you really don't need to become an expert at ESG. You can really entrust us with that task and we'll deal with it with all our expertise. And so that you can stay focused, I would say, on your business objectives. So how does Appiday work? It works like kind of all the reporting platforms, I would say. We start by helping you collect the data from your portfolio ecosystem, but also from your fund within. And here we have a lot of smart features that make that process a lot easier. We know that ESG involves all the departments of the companies and the fund, and so we need to gather data from various people that don't all need to use Appiday beyond just sharing one information. And so we make that very easy within the tool. We also make it easy to share the information with AI. So you can drag and drop any document on Appiday. We will extract ESG information from that document, structure it internally, and use it to answer whatever questionnaire you have. When the data comes in, it's then analyzed, and here we have an automated tool to check the quality of the data that came in. Again, make sure people didn't do a typo, so you can set minimum, maximum bounds on the data you receive. You can make sure the data is not too different from last year's data. You can check the data is not too far from the benchmark numbers that we have, and all that saves you tons of time, because instead of checking every single data point you receive, you only check the ones that have been flagged by the system, which reduces your burden dramatically and ensures that you have a peace of mind on the rest of the data that they have passed all these checks. And then once the data is in, well, we do a lot of fancy stuff from dashboarding, custom dashboarding, benchmarking and scoring. We also have a base of over 4,000 companies from pre-seed to pre-IPO that have put data on Happy Day, and we benchmark on about 30 indicators here. And we do everything to do with compliance. And so here, if you're a fund, we support you on SFDR, on taxonomy. We support your portco on CSRD, and probably the place in ESG where you, as ESG managers of funds, spend most time is LP reporting. And we have a whole kind of LP reporting module that helps you automate as many of the LP requests that you receive, answer them, and export them in the right format back to your LPs. And then what kind of makes us stand out from a lot of providers out there as well is the improvement piece. And so here, from the very beginning of Happy Day, we've always had this improvement brick in place. And so any companies that logs into Happy Day based on their industry and based on their size, we automatically generate a double materiality matrix that they can refine thereafter. We generate a maturity questionnaire based on the few most important material topics that these companies have, so very easy to use. That generates a score, and that generates an action plan that the companies can act on immediately. And we believe that this is the future of ESG, improving ESG performance, because we've kind of automated the whole kind of reporting and compliance part. We can just focus on the most important topics and improving them. Oops. Up. Perfect. So again, it's an ESGVC talk, and so ESGVC is embedded in Happy Day everywhere. So when you create your questionnaire, you can simply check the ESGVC checkbox, and your questionnaire will appear with perfectly integrated as ESGVC intends it. Same in your metrics tab, same in your export tab. It's everywhere in the Happy Day tool. And lastly, so we go beyond data collection, as I said, so benchmarking, scoring, compliance, data reusability, and improvement. And I really want to kind of stress out the time-saving pieces here for your portcos and for yourself. Data reusability for portfolio companies is critical. They receive tons of questionnaires, not just from investors, but from different investors, but also tender questionnaire and other types of questionnaire. On Happy Day, they can drag and drop all of these questionnaires on the platform, and whatever data they have will be reused and pre-answer a lot of these other questionnaires that they have, saving them tons of time. We do the same for funds with the LP requests. You can drag and drop your LP request, and we will reuse the data, do all the calculation. That's a massive time saver. And the other piece I want to talk about that differentiates us is this improvement piece. And so your portfolio companies will have a space where they can understand what metrics are actually material to them, how to improve on these, how to collaborate with consultants as well if they need. We have also a whole kind of ESG template library where if they need policies, they can very easily create them on the platform. That's super value add. And to finish, I mean, we have a lot of other differentiators. We're like a very international actor. We're present in more than 25 countries. We have a super easy UX UI, which is very important for your portfolio companies specifically, but for you as well to work on a tool that is a tool that you enjoy. And we have a massive market share in the VC space all across Europe and beyond. We're really VC specialists. We understand your pain. We know that you don't want to bother your portfolio companies, and you're right to do so. So, to look good to your portcos, we provide an easy to use tool. We provide a tool that uses AI to make collection easier for them. We make sure the data can be reused across all of their needs, and we provide them with benchmarking and improvement to provide value to them. We also know you need to look good to your LPs. And so here we help you answer their requests in a lot more detail than what you probably previously were doing and in a lot less time. And also we help you kind of improve those ESG performance, which is super important for them. And to finish, because I think I'm on time, I will just mention that we will offer a 25% discount to any fund that joins us before the end of the year, and 15% discount thereafter because of the link with ESGVC.
Fantastic. Thank you. That's great.
Thank you very much.
Obviously, we'll share details of all of the platforms
Yep.
that's the call today. So I think over to you, Connor, next.
Thanks, Henry, and great to be here. My name is Connor Lera. I head up partnerships and go-to-market at Novata. And I'm here to briefly inform you about who we are and what we do, and how to get in contact with us. I think to start with, I will give you a brief intro on where we're coming at this from. So Novata is the leading ESG technology solution in private markets. And we're orientated around helping investors and their companies to make it very easy to collect, report, analyze, and ultimately benchmark on the metrics that matter to them. I think our relationship with ESGVC is testament to that, as one of the first firms to digitize the metric set. For those of you that are not familiar with us as an organization, we've been around for just over 3 years now, and have a unique consortium of investors that include S&P Global, Microsoft, and Northern Trust. I think this is particularly important for those investors that are looking for a long-term partner, given the saturation in this segment. Today, we work with over 180 investors globally, with offices in APAC, North America, and EMEA. And we have 9,000 companies and counting contracted using the platform today. I think our point of difference is very much in the benchmarking capacity. So we have the broadest set of ESG benchmarks in the market. We've just released our latest set with over 12,000 company-specific benchmarks in the platform that are available to our clients. I think we inherently understand the pain of VCs. A large portion of the companies, over 1,200 of our clients, have less than 100 employees, and we see an 84% completion rate within that cohort. So a lot of the points have been touched on already today, but I think that the one that I'd call out is time and resource poor, which we all know about on this call. But I guess the way we think about this is very much being an extension of your ESG team. We have 150 people globally. A lot of those sit in a client success and advisory capacity. So a lot of the feedback we get from our clients is that we're an extension of the investor ESG team. In some cases, there is none, and we are their extension. And then similarly, at a portco level, we also act as an extension of their teams that are typically resource light. I think the things to call out on the right-hand side are process automation around AI, so particularly around OCR scanning and document gap analysis and automating the data upload process. We want to take that time away from you. I also would add that we have a dedicated advisory team of consultants that sit on top of the technology. This is not relevant to every company, but for those that need additional support, they can avail of that team as well. In terms of metrics, so again, we're driving the metric conversation globally. We have 3,500 metrics in our library today. We're working at all stages of the market in terms of voluntary and mandatory regulations. And ESGVC is no different, working closely with Henry and team to make sure that you guys are supported. So you essentially can collect any non-financial metric using Novata, but obviously we, as a leading player in the market, are trying to help drive standardization and convergence against the metrics that we see being widely adopted. So in summary, this is our offering to investors and portfolio companies at large. ESG data management, again, trying to give you time back take away the busy work of data collection and allowing our software to do that in an automated way. Secondly, carbon accounting. So we have a full carbon accounting offering within our platform for scope 1, 2, and 3 for those that need it. Regulatory compliance. We have an in-house regulatory and metric team that is monitoring the regulatory market at a regional level, and they manage and add to the library of 3,500 metrics that I mentioned. And then lastly, we have also a team of advisory experts that typically will replace a consultancy relationship at a much lower cost for those that need that. And then more recently, we're also engaging with portfolio companies directly, specifically around CSRD in EMEA, but also for general data collection and carbon accounting needs as well. Similar to our friends at Happy Day, we also have a discount of 15% for those that are members, and we can follow up directly with Henry around the details of that. I think that gets me there. This is my details for anyone that wants to follow up directly, and thanks again for having us here.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Connor. And as I say, we'll make sure everyone's contact details are posted on afterwards. So last but not least, we have Alex from Port F as well.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alex. I'm the CEO and founder of Port F. Port F is a portfolio management solution platform for investors to collect both financial and non-financial information from their portfolio companies and provide insight and streamlines the reporting. For the purpose of today, I'll specifically focus on our ESG module, which we have worked with the ESG VC framework for over 3 years with existing clients, and very much honored to be selected by BVCA to be their ESG data platform as well. So as a way of introduction, I just want to say that we know the pain because at Port F, it was built out of my personal experience. I did public trading for 9 years and in the private market for 6 years. I know the pain of collecting data from portfolio companies, especially after you have given the money, let alone ESG data. And at the same time, there is increasing demand from all the LPs of ESG metrics, and they're all very different. They ask for more process, policies, procedures, and also reports. So we hope that we can help you with all different requests when it comes to ESG data. On the other hand, we are also a startup invested by VCs. So we also know the pain of companies getting different spreadsheet platforms, need to remember different logins for a different platform to submit their data. So that's why we built Port F to streamline and ease the pain for both sides of the table. Over the past 3 years, we had the opportunity to work with a number of high quality institutional clients from VC to private equity. Our solution is also trusted by government clients like National Investment Bank, Scottish Government, and the NHS. You might ask, why do clients pick to work with us, and why should you use us for your ESG data collection run along with ESG VC framework? Because we reduce it down to 3 clicks for you. And what that translates into is time and resource reduction. This is a direct quote from one of our clients. On average, they save about 40 hours in reporting cycle and cut down data collection and analytic times by 75%. So for today's overview, I'll very briefly touch on what we can offer you as investors for your portfolio companies, and also the analytics we can drive at the back end. Zoom into for investors. As you can see on the right-hand side, we want to reduce 3 clicks for you. Number 1 is click on template. Number 2 is type in your personalized message and select the companies in one go. Number 3 is set deadline and off you send. And that's all it takes. Oops. From there, we'll take off the email tracking, the data collection, the data cleansing, and quite a few of nudgings and data aggregation. We can also further support you with multi-currencies and also integration with the CRM or backend fund administration system like Investran, eFront, or whichever you choose to use. One feature I want to highlight that a lot of clients really like from our platform, and this is due to the nature of clients we work with, which are often government entities, which is rigorous log trail. It helps you to reduce the risk of greenwashing. For companies, we want to reduce the frictions for them to complete. So over the past 3 years, of all the companies that complete ESG VC framework monitoring on PortF platform, on average, it took them 5 minutes. They don't need to remember a password. It's a magic link, and it's a seamless experience. And we also remember the answers from previous years if they come back for a second year. We produce a report, PDF, and track metrics on the dashboard for them on the back of it, and allow them to share with other investors as well. And if the organization is slightly larger with a different department, we can allow them for cross collaboration. And then we offer free carbon calculator in order to get them on track of carbon emission. This is exactly what they will see. On the left-hand side is they'll get a form, they complete within 5 minutes. On the right-hand side, they get dashboard and also PDF that shows them the benchmarking, what they should be working on, how they compare to themselves, others, and rest of the industry in accordance to their stage, sector, and relevance. Analytics, I think Emily mentioned earlier, because frameworks do change, but some of the questions don't change. So therefore, we can compare on the question level year on year, wherever it's comparable, fund level aggregation, benchmarking, and AI summary of assessment. Just to be honest about it, nobody gonna read through 50 questions of yes and no for every single portfolio company. And this is where we use AI to summarize for you, so you can see on a very high level overview, whether it's for due diligence or annual monitoring. Just to share some of the upcoming project and roadmap where we think we can further benefit you, add value to you fund. Number one is we have been selected to be the exclusive technology partner for AIM-listed companies on ESG initiatives along with industry. Hopefully, this will join the dots between VC and the AIM market that allow companies to understand what is expected of them at different stage of their maturity. Number two, we work very closely with the government clients on sustainability reporting requirements. Number three, we are one of the 7 major projects that's selected by Innovate UK to drive industry collaboration. Next step, if you don't want to jump on calls and talk to someone specifically, it's very easy. You can do a test run directly on our website to get a feel of how it feels like if you use our platform and how your company will experience it. We do charge a small fee for it, of which we'll donate 50% to ESG VC and the other 50% to a charity. And if you want to work with us, just like everyone else, we have a special offer for ESG VC community. You can go straight onto the website to find out exact pricing without having to talk to anyone. But if you want to talk to us, I'm here, and we'll always love to see how we can help you to make it easier for your fund. That's all. Thank you.
Well, fantastic. And thank you to all 3 of you. I'll just reiterate to all of our members, we will obviously still have the free version of the framework available online, so do go ahead and download that and take a look. But I think we're increasingly finding firms are getting to the point of maturity where they need to start to think about more comprehensive data collection tools. So do obviously reach out to Alex, Connor, and Ed. But that leaves us with a few minutes for Q&A. So thank you to all of our speakers. Susie and Emily, I think now we'll tackle as many of the questions as we possibly can from the Q&A. Susie, maybe first I can just quickly turn to you. There's been a question about the BVCA's data collection, how that aligns with our own work with the ESGVC and how you sort of think about that general process of harmonization.
Thanks, Henry, and thanks to whoever asked that one. It's a question I get asked many times.
We're losing your audio a bit, Susie, I'm afraid. A little bit. It's a bit tinny.
I'll crack on because I've run out of time.
Better.
So big picture, there are an awful lot of initiatives out there. I think it was on one of Connor's slides that he listed out quite a lot of different initiatives. There is ongoing work to try and align those where possible. The BVCA's own data collection is aligned with the Invest Europe framework. It's a subset of that. And I know that a lot of the work that Emily and Henry have done is to align the two. So what I would say is that if you're completing ESG VC framework, you will have all the answers you need to complete the BVCA survey. And that is a very intentional alignment. And indeed, the new Invest Europe reporting template is also out today. So it's a big day for ESG reporting. So again, there are still quite a lot of templates. They're designed with slightly different things in mind, but there is a massive recognition across the community that where possible, where we're asking for the same metric, we need to ask it in the same way. So you're not asked for, a diversity as a numerical number at one point and as a percentage somewhere else. So we are absolutely doing our best to align as and when we can.
Great, thanks, Susie. And then Emily, maybe one question for you. There's often been questions around just sort of what we see as the roadmap of changes going forward. Is the framework going to keep changing to this extent? What do we kind of have in mind as updates for the next couple of years?
Sure, happy to take that. So I think it's our hope that it doesn't change to this same extent again. I think this year has been a bit of an unprecedented amount of changes. And so we're kind of hoping that it's not a one and done, but that we've made kind of the significant changes that we've seen amounting over the past few years done this year. That said, as I mentioned earlier, we're always seeing ESG evolve, whether that's kind of new themes coming to light, whether that's previous metrics that once were important being seen as less relevant. So there will always be changes coming through, or at least for the foreseeable future. So we are going to have to kind of consistently stay in line with that. But we are trying to limit them because we understand that people do want that year-on-year kind of cross comparison to work. So yeah, it's really about kind of thinking which are the most prevalent and putting those in.
Yeah, and I know one of the questions that we've been asked to consider quite a lot by members in the broader ecosystem has been around biodiversity, for example. And so that as a topic, just as a case study, I suppose, is something that we've definitely identified as on our roadmap for the next couple of years, but I think it does take us time to just understand what is the point at which it becomes particularly relevant or pertinent for companies, whether that's down to regulation, sort of customer requests, the sort of broader landscape of ESG reporting. And so we will sort of build a metric out over time just to make sure that it's sort of embedded in the right and appropriate and material way. I think unfortunately that's us pretty much done for the event. I had hoped to run through a few more questions. I think there will be lots of opportunity for us to continue discussing this. So thank you very much to everyone who joined us on the call today. And thank you obviously to all of our speakers, and particularly to Susie and Emily for your part in putting together today's event. I will just also say we'll send a recording out to everyone. Please do obviously take a look at the new framework, and we'll be in touch with further information on what to expect from our benchmarking and research in partnership with the BVCA in 2025. And do keep an eye out obviously for all of the other events and resources and updates that we'll be sharing across the ESGBC network. I think on the biodiversity point specifically, we're looking to host another webinar in December before the end of the year, which will be largely directed at your portfolio companies. So yeah, thank you very much, everyone. Apologies we didn't quite have enough time to run through all the questions that we've received, but I hope that today's session has been useful, and please do get in touch. Thank you. Cheers.